Right, that didn't go so well, did it? You might see that bit of a video, you might not. It wasn't very good. Basically, worms. Worms are segmented creatures. They're hemidaphyrites, which means they've got both sex organs. The saddle, what we were always told is where its heart is when I was at school, is actually its reproductive organs. Its correct term is a clitella, and I think they call it that because it swells up. Yeah, and what happens is one worm will stick his nose, their nose under one's clitella, and the other one sticks that one, if you've ever seen them tied together. And what happens is they swap sperms, swap eggs, and they fertilise each other, and then they roll down the, what do you call it, and it produces one of these, if you can see it. Yeah. Oh no, it's not going to zoom. There. Yeah. Right. It's a cocoon. It's not an egg. Inside that little cocoon, there's probably, it can be up to 6 or 8 worms. Some species they cover up with 20, but the ones that we use, Dendrobinas, there's about 5 or 6. When they're born, when they hatch, they're about 3 millimeters long and white. Give them 4 days, they're about 5 millimeters long, and they turn red. Right, and as they get bigger, obviously they go more. You can see the segments better as they get bigger. You can always tell when they're mature because they'll have a pronounced saddle. It'll be swelled up, which means they're in breeding condition. And a worm can live for, believe it or not, 5 years. No problem. If it's kept in the right conditions and it's not too much hot, not too much cold, not too much food and moisture. But the cocoons, they're clever. The cocoons, nobody knows how long they can live for. They can survive. They just hatch when the conditions are right, so they could go for 10 years and not hatch and then suddenly hatch. It doesn't really bother them. Nobody really knows. I've researched into it, obviously. I've researched, worms. There's not much about worms I don't know now. But they don't know. So if the conditions are right, they'll hatch, and the conditions usually are moist, warm, and not too big a, up and down in temperature. It's got to remain pretty stable. They like it at about that temperature, 23, 24 degrees, but they're happy between 16 and 21, 23 degrees. They don't mind. They'll stand a 5-degree variation, no problem. And this is not what I've read. This is just my experience so far, and I mark it's 1st of October today, and I've been at my worm farm since properly since 1st of April, beginning of April, just after lockdown started. And yeah, I've learned all this in this time. I've had some mistakes, we've had some failures, but now just got it nice and sweet. So yeah, I feed my worms on ground up layers pellets for chickens. It's got everything they need in it. You can feed on chick crumbs, you use layers mash, but there's a lot of wheat and that they can't digest, so I don't use that. I put some porridge in it, some flour, and eggshells. Eggshells are very important, and limestone. Eggshells are obviously limestone because they're made of eggshell, which is made from limestone, but limestone is very important to keep the pH of the beds right. The acid level. If the beds go acid, your worms will die. They'll all come to the top, they start to fall to bits and they die. Sometimes when you've kept some in your garage or in your fridge or whatever, and you've seen them and they all start to stretch and die, that's not necessarily because of cold. It could be that there's acid. When you see a worm, when they're all in a cluster, you've seen them all get into a big cluster, that means that whatever they're in isn't wet enough. Okay, when you get stuff from a tackle shop, the black stuff, which is actually vermicompost, it's worm poo. It's dry. That's because the worms are in a big ball because they're keeping each other moist. Worms breathe through the skin, right? They take oxygen out of the air into the water, and the water then passes through the water into the skin, right? So if a worm dries out, it dies. It basically suffocates. So you've got to keep them moist, but not them. When you see them in a corner and they're all I've done it. I've seen it in my own beds. Just this morning, because it's warm in here, water evaporates obviously, and I can tell because they all get into a big corner in a clump and you think they need a drink. So just give them some water. You don't want to be sloppy, they don't want to be running in it, they don't want to be, what do you call it, just needs to be. There's a guy on YouTube which I watch, says it should be the consistency of cake mixture, right? And it is. It's not too wet, it's not too dry, it's just nice. Aim for about 70 to 80% moisture, right? You won't go wrong. If you put eggshell or lime, you can buy limestone flour. You get it from garden centres and stuff, or just ground up crushed limestone, what you use to put, you know, dig into your garden to make ground sweeter. You can put that in it as well, and it'll always, whenever it's there, it doesn't do any harm. You can't burn them. It's not like lime, as some people keep saying, oh, it'll burn them. It's not lime, it's limestone. It just corrects the pH, that's all it does. You can't put too much in it, you know, they live in it. Other things that worms like to live in, I keep them not just in here. I've got totes like them with horse manure, veg peelings, stuff like that. I put them there just to give me a little bit extra worms. If I use them for fishing, that's where I go and get them from. I don't use them out of here. No, I use them out of bins outside. And I use a compost bin, you know, a dustbin, and we put all veg peelings in it. And despite what people, I put food in it, food that's cooked, mashed potatoes, vegetables, stuff like that. It goes in it. All right, it's inside a bin. No vermin can get to it. Okay, they love it. If it's open and it's in your back garden, people say, oh, you shouldn't put food in it because it'll attract vermin. You're putting food in it anyway. Do you think a rat cares a potato peeling's not cooked? They couldn't care less. Same thing. Don't matter. Right, so you can make them like that. It's not as efficient, you know what I mean? And some of you might think, well, this bloke's crazy, he's telling us how to breed worms, yet he's trying to sell them us. I'm not trying to sell them you. I'm not marketing at all. I don't do that. If you want worms fishing, I'll sell them you. Right, that's the idea. But there's so many strings, so many threads to what this can do. I breed worms, yeah. I've got an allotment again, and I'll have compost bins on there, but the compost that you make from worms is brilliant for your garden, for your allotment, for your garden. It's brilliant, right? So if you're going to go into this thing, yeah, you can do it. Just, you know, if you want a few worms for yourself, just to keep yourself going, you know what I mean? Get a couple of totes, coconut coir. It's a bit expensive. It's about £14 with postage. If you can find it from a, you know, I've looked all over Wicks, B&Q garden centres, none of them seem to have it. I get mine from a place on eBay, and I get 350 litres when it's, because it comes in a block and you mix it with water and it expands, you know, like an old sponges, it does that. And I get about 350 litres for about 40 quid. You know what I mean? You can get it for, you know, £5 or £6 a block, give you 5 or 6 litres, which is ample if you're just doing it for yourself. And just get that and soak it. Get some shredded paper or some ripped up egg boxes, you know, the squashed up paper ones. Chuck some of that in, chuck your worms in it. Make it a good mix, put some water in it, do it. Chuck your worms in, you know what I mean? Go to a fishing shop, get a quarter kilo of worms or half a kilo or a kilo, whatever, and chuck it in. What I would do if you're going to do that, use 2 totes and get a kilo of worms and set them going, put half a kilo in each, and then you can use half a kilo, which you can go and nab a few when you want to go fishing. But the other ones, keep them all right, you know, keep temperature right and keep them fed. Like I said, they love mashed potato, they love anything. You can use veg peelings on top of your what do you call it, because remember, the worms don't actually eat the veg peelings. It's a misnomer. They don't eat the veg peelings, they eat the microbes that eat the veg peelings. So they're basically they're a carnivore, if you like. They like live prey. They've only got little mouths, so basically as the microbial process starts on and it starts to rot, that rot is what causes the worms eat. If you ever notice when you dig around, they're always in the snottiest, smelliest, stickiest, horriblest part of the bin, always. And that's because that's where most of the microbes are. If they get too wet, they will drown because they've got to have oxygen, and sometimes there's no oxygen in water. Believe it or not, it can become unoxygenated. So all my trays have got little holes, and none that are on the other side. They've got holes drilled in them so that water can escape. It doesn't really do that much now because the shredded paper soaks it up and whatever. And then don't let them dry out. Keep them in dark. And like I said, they don't mind it being freezing cold. If in winter and it's cold, just leave them outside. Just cover them up so they don't get too much water in, and just leave them. And you'll be surprised in the winter how many worms you'll get in a compost bin through the winter. Because just remember, when you're putting this veg peelings and all the stuff and whatever, it gets hot. It begins to work, and as it works, it creates heat, and that heat keeps it warm. Just a few tips of stuff not to give you worms. If you're breeding them and you want to do them, no citrus, no lemons, limes, oranges, nothing like that. Apples, fine. Soft fruit, strawberries, stuff like that, no problem. Bread, they like bread, right? So get bread, dunk it in water, break it apart, chuck it in. Right? Mashed potato, they love mashed potato, they really, really do. If you put mashed potato in a lump, keep watching it, you'll see it and suck down slowly and lift it up. There'll be hundreds of worms underneath just bellying it. They love it. Right? A worm can eat its own body weight every day. I know it's only a little worm, probably only weighs a gram, but that's like me eating 14 stone every day. Think about that. It wouldn't take me long to get wet fat again, would it? So that's a little introduction to this video. I hope I haven't bored you too much. And what I'll do is, when I can find my stand thing on my phone, I'll make a video and I'll put them on so you can see how I do it, when I do it. Because like I said, no secrets from you. There's no big deal about this. I want people to do it because it's not only is it make sure you've got worms. I'm obviously doing it because I want to make a few quid at it and I enjoy doing it. I see that there is a niche in the market. A lot of suppliers of worms on eBay are wanting £39–45 a kilo. That's a lot of money for a kilo of worms. I'm not going to say how much I pay for a kilo of worms, but it is substantially less than £40. Substantially less. I buy them in smaller, so I can fatten them up. I'd rather do that, because if I buy 5 kilo of worms and they're this big, when they're fully grown, they'll double their weight because they eat their own weight every day. So there you go, they will double their weight. So when I start with 5 kilos of worms this big, I'll end up with 10 kilos of worms that big. Speak to you soon, people.